So how did you beat Bonnie and get that opportunity?
Well, I came off the road from Julio.
Okay.
And this again all started with my buddy Buford. We're sitting in the studio and he gets a call from it's the sound company out of it's Colorado now. I'll think of it in a second, but they were a Canadian sound group that moved down in the States, and Buford had done a lot of work with them. And Buford gets a call from them, and they're saying Julio's having all kinds of trouble with sound and stuff, and he just moved to the States and had all these problems and everything. And so I'm sitting with Buford at the studio while this phone call's coming through, and he said, well, they're going to pay me a whole bunch of money to come out and listen to it for a week before I go out. I can't remember, it's either the Jackson, Victory Tour or what. I mean, it was some super tour Buford was waiting to start. And he calls me up every night while he's out with Julio. He's calling me up. He says, I haven't touched the board. I haven't done anything. I just sit here and listen. And it's a young guy who has no experience whatsoever. He just did a one-off gig in Miami for Julio, and Julio liked him. And I'll give it to Julio. Julio was really a nice guy, and he didn't know any of this stuff. But when he found the man's name was Chris Carlson, he's a great engineer now. But he was trying to get his chops together, and Buford on the last night of him doing stuff there, he calls me up. I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, I just think he needs a helper. He needs somebody that's got the experience to get him tied down and help him do this stuff. And so I went out the next day, and Buford was his last day there, and it was Julio's birthday. I mean, these kind of stories, I don't know how I get there, and it's Julio's birthday, and they're playing the big showroom, and I'm looking at it, and it was so quiet when they started the show, and I'd met Chris, the engineer, and I'm standing there, and I'm not doing anything. I am not hired yet. I'm just there to listen and everything. And when they started, it was like, tick, 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 tick. I mean, here's this, he's got everything. It's like a 24-piece orchestra and everything, and it was so quiet that it was just Julio's voice and his reverb, and everything else was just really soft and everything. And what they just needed somebody to come in and help. And which I did. And when Buford left, he said, man, all I can tell you, if you don't like it, dog it home. Get your Greyhound ticket on your own and ding him out, And ended up staying 6 years.
Yeah. And that led you into Bonnie, right?
Yeah. Because, after I came off a 3-month thing in South America with Julio, I'm sitting there with Buford again, and he gets a call, and it's from Mason Wilkinson, who was her guitar tech and stage manager guy. And Buford said, well, he said, Bonnie would like to hire you for 2 weeks, and she can pay you $750, and she knew him through Jackson. And he said, well, I've got a couple of guys I can recommend. And Buford, after we got off, he said, man, I couldn't just throw you right at them. You got a gig, but anyway, Mason called me, and we had a talk and everything. I told him, he said, how would you describe what you'd make Bonnie sound like? I said, well, from what I've heard her guitar playing. It's just really excellent.
Very
slide
good.
Playing.
Yeah.
And I said I would hear the band just a really punchy full rhythm section, which she had, and then her voice right up on top of it, in your face. And he says, man, that sounds just about like what I hear when we have an.
And 2 weeks turned into 30 years essentially.
30 years. The first gig was in a beer bar, and there's a T-shirt out there that's it's got a big ear on it.
Yeah.
On the way to the airport, because I had only talked to Mason, I hadn't talked to anybody in the band or nothing. they're flying in from L.A. and changing planes in Dallas, and I've been up 3, like you do. When you leave on something like this, there's 2 or 3 artists going, aren't you going to finish my stuff? And so you're up all day and all night mixing and finishing a couple of projects. So I get on the airplane, I don't see anybody, and I just kind of I get a window seat, and I'm like, oh, and all of a sudden, they're trying to close the door on the airplane. I still hadn't seen any of the band. All of a sudden, they're come on, and here comes Bonnie, and she's got her hair up and a hat pulled down and sunglasses and everything, and all the rest of the band looked like they'd been doing blow all night. They were so just wiped out, and their seats were in the back of the airplane. But I bought that T-shirt on the way to the gig. After I said, I want to check her out. Because I was ready to leave Julio. I really loved everything about it, but I was so tired of flying from Perth to New York.
Yeah.
16-hour flight.
International flights.
All the time. We flew from New York to Tokyo, over the top, for a one-nighter.
Wow.
And then flew back.
And then back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just all the time, and I was just wore out, and I wasn't seeing my family, and I was just ready to make that next step if it came along. And so when he asked me, and after I talked to Mason, Buford called and said, hey man, you got the gig, and Buford turned to me and he said, well, I can't really do the tour, Bonnie, and he finally talked to her, and he said, I really can't do it. And she said, well, I don't have any money because I haven't played in 4 years, and this kind of stuff. And he said, well, I'm getting ready to go out for 3.5 months, and they're going to pay me $5,000 a week. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so that's when all the stuff happened with me, and Bobby Hickey was the other engineer offered up to her. And anyway, I get this shirt. I stop at Love's gas station. I sit there, paying for the tag, and I look over and see these T-shirts, and it's a big rubber ear that sticks out on your chest, and underneath it in lowercase but really bold things it says "huh."
Yeah.
And so, I'm gonna check her out. If she's that kind of, I want to see if her true nature is what it would be great to work.
Like playful and stuff.
Yeah. Just and so I had the shirt on.
She's a redhead, so I imagine she's probably pretty playful.
Oh, she's playful.
Yeah.
To the death of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the shirt. I put the T-shirt on at the truck stop, and then I had a flannel shirt over it. And so I had it, covered up. Nobody knew.
You set her up.
I set her up really good. And because I was on the front of the airplane and they were in the back, as soon as the plane landed, it was somewhere in North or South Carolina, little medium city of the first gig, and it was just a beer bar. It probably held 125 people, and it held 500 while we were doing it. It was just like that,
wall to wall.
And so I go to the bathroom, then head on, okay, the baggage claim's down here, and I go down there, and it's down an escalator, and all I can hear is this, where's my new sound guy? Where's my new sound guy? And she goes, where's Paulie, my new sound guy? She's yelling it all out down there in baggage claim, and I'm going, oh boy. And I said, this is going to be great. So I come riding down there like Trump. I'm riding down the golden escalator like this, just, kind of, just easing on into it. And as I get to the bottom of the escalator and get off of it, and I was the only one on it, she was about from here to the door right there and turned that way and was just turning around, just broadcasting with this, beacon of and she got a really mid-range voice.
Yeah.
And she finally turns around, and I'm just standing there looking at her, about this far, and I'm just staring her right now, and she looks at me like this for a second. And just wondered, are you the guy? And then I did this. She stared me down. I go, and opened it up, that big rubber ear, and boy, she goes. She looks at it, looks me in the eye again, looks down at it, and looks me in the eye, and then she goes. Walks straight over and gives me a wet willy in my rubber ear. And I said, I think I'm going to whack this.
That's great.
And so she had, she had, most of the old band members that she had, Hutch and all these guys. Hutch used to play with the brothers in New Orleans, and we go to this gig, and it's just, they're all little one-off beer bars, except for the last one of the gigs was at Wolf Trap, and here's a real gig. But I come in there, and they all we went straight to the gig, and they all kind of load their stuff around a couple of big tables, and they're working on a set list. So the keyboard player that she'd brought in was, she leaned over, she says, "Do you think the Holiday Inn will ever wear off this guy?" Because he was dressed real nice and playing a keyboard on a stand, but he was really pop music personified. But they get over to start working, and I get the house guy out there, and they had 4 old JBL boxes up there, and I said, well, at least the speaker cabinets are, let's put it. And right before I left, Buford said this was, May of '86, and CD players had just come out, and Sony's were in the, had a battery plate that they sat on.
Mm-hmm.
He said, if you got the money, go buy you a CD player and get 2 or 3 of the best CDs that you like. And
that would have been really early on in CDs. Then.
Yeah, really early.
Really early, yeah.
And the big hit record at the time was Stevie Winwood's Higher Life.
Yeah.
And boy, I bought that one immediately, and I got the very first Three Dog Night album was Eli's Coming when they were rockers.
Right.
So I had 2 or 3 CDs, but I had that one ready to go, Stevie, and they had 1 power amp for the whole system. When I go up on stage, I look around. I look, and it's a PV800. That's what I call the 2x4 speaker block.
Right.
They had 8 banana clips into all of it into one hole on it, and we're running it mono, and they had a 2x4 underneath it to support the weight of the banana clips so they wouldn't fall out.
Right.
I'm going, oh my gosh, it's a 2x4,
That's when you want your soldering iron back, right?
Oh, well, I called the kid that was, the owner wasn't even there at the club, but the kid, I said, babe, I need 3 brand new power amps in the boxes. I don't want you running over to somebody's garage and getting this.
Yeah.
And I said, if you can't do that in the next 10 or 15 minutes, we're not going to have a show tonight.
Yeah.
I will not put an artist up to sound because it just sounded horrible.
Oh, so it's Kenny G, right? And you would have been fine with garage amps.
Yeah. I pulled up when I pulled up, I put, the Stevie in and started playing the song, and it's all percussion, and I turned it down and I pulled it right back down, and Bonnie's sitting 20 feet over here, kind of we're doing this little thing where we're kind of eyeballing each other.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing this and kind of looking over there, and all of a sudden, boy, the amps showed up, and the kid had done his really good homework. All of the banana clips were labeled, and they had the cable thing, and all of a sudden, 2 of them over there and 1 of them right here. And I wired the whole thing in like 5 minutes.
Wow.
And then walked out front, and I said, well, you do have a stereo crossover. He said, just a minute. He gets in the back of it, and all of a sudden I'm back to stereo with all this thing. Then I put in the music again and slowly pulled it up, and he had stereo graphics there. And just as I was coming up, I kind of hitting a couple of hot spots. And I'd look over at Bonnie, and and that's it. After I got it up to full volume, just had a few EQ tweaks on it. I'm looking over at her, and she's kind of doing this in her seat, looking back at me like this. And by the time I got halfway into the song and at full volume like this, she was out of her chair doing the grind.
Yep.
And I said, well, that's a good start.
Yeah.
Anyway, we did the show real quick, and it came off great. The crowd was really rocking, and Bonnie, she was really rocking because she hadn't played like that in almost 4 years.
It had been a minute, yeah.
And boy, she was just ripping it up, and they played a great set and everything. Finished the show and everything, and I'm trying to pack my brand new CD player away before I didn't want to lay it there. All of a sudden, this guy comes walking up to me, and he's not the age that all these young people were, and he's he's a bald headed guy like this, and he's just trying to point. I need you to go with me right now. And I'm going. I want to say, are you gay? Because I have to make a decision before I go with you.
Right.
Yeah, and it was real nice. He goes, I'm Tim Burnett. I'm Bonnie's manager. And I went, oh, okay. I said, well, let me pack this. He said, well, the other thing was, Buford said, take your computer with you when you go out. And I had the first Mac 512.
Wow.
I mean, it took 3 or 4 floppies just to get it started. And he says, take a spreadsheet thing, because everybody out there was still using, 3x5 cards.
Right.
Each song, they'd flip it over and so forth. He said, take your computer and do your set list on there. He said, it'll blow them all away. He said, there's not a musician in L.A. that's all turned on the computers.
Yeah.
They were computer geeks before.
That's 86.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've got my big, beautiful, Apple bag with this, black and white screen this big, and the computer's this big. And so I immediately set it up out there, and they're all looking at me, man, he's got a computer. And I was hearing little bits and pieces from the guys in the band. Man, this guy, he must be some kind of pro. I mean, all this stuff. And did the show and everything. Of course, everybody was real happy, and Tim grabs me, and I just grabbed my CD player and stuck it inside my jacket and held it on. Went backstage. Bonnie's running around just like Cheryl. Oh, boy, this was so much fun. And she was just going on, and she was soaking wet because it was just a beer bar.
Yeah.
She had a towel, trying to, get the water out of her hair and all this stuff. And she looked at me, and then Tim looked at her and says, this is the best I've ever heard you sound in your entire career. And she looks at me, and she runs over and jumps up on me.
Nice.
With her feet dangling all like this, whispering, promise me you'll stay with me forever. Promise me you'll, I couldn't, I'm sitting going, well,
I guess I'm going to have to call Julio.
Yeah, what, I just sit there, and she, she said it 2 or 3 times.
No more red eyes to Tokyo.
That's it, red eyes to L.A. from New York. That's as far as we're going. But she just looked me dead in the eyes, and she said, will you stay with me? And I said, you got my phone number.
Yeah.
And I said, when you're ready to, when you're at that stage of really getting it done. So the next 2 years, she did maybe a 3-week gig on the next year, and then the next year she was finishing up Nick of Time.
Yeah.
So we were getting ready to do the full tour and everything, and the record company she'd signed with Ron Stone and Gold Mountain. She had everything working for her.
Yeah.
And the album was, Ed Cherney, engineered it, and Don Was produced it. Mm-hmm. And it was just, it took 3 videos before they, the video with Dennis Quaid, let's give them something to talk about, that hit the women, and VH1 came online at that same time when she was. She
just came out of nowhere.
She came out of nowhere, and
but she was so talented long before people knew who she was.
She was,
yeah.
And with that help from the record company and management and everything, she won 5 Grammys on that thing.
Just and with all of those wins, she's still considered underrated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when she won, it was 2 years ago, she won Song of the Year.
Yeah.
And
we're talking 40 years later now, almost, right?
Yeah, and she's, well, I'm 78, she's 75.
I won't tell her that you told her age.
Yeah, I never do much tell anybody, but they all know it. Yeah. I mean, that's part of the beauty of it all, that when she goes out, she has so many dedicated fans of that age, and we just, we went from one record to the next. But what I did on the first tour of Nick of Time, I tried something that we, Chris and I had, toyed with Julio, and that was trying to